Divide and simplify. I'm going to rewrite this problem first as 2x squared minus 7x plus 6 over 2x squared minus 6x minus 20. And I'm going to rewrite this as multiplying by the reciprocal. So times the reciprocal of this fraction. So x squared plus x minus 2, which was in the bottom, comes up top. And 3 minus 5x plus 2x squared moves to the bottom. But because we're going to have to factor, I'm going to reorder this. I'm going to have the 2x squared come first, then the minus 5x, and then the positive 3. I'm going to have all of these in descending order. So now when it comes to factor these, we're going to do this in 4 parts because we've got 4 separate polynomials to factor. So for starters, this top left, we've got 2x squared minus 7x plus 6. The first thing we always look for is a common factor, but I see that there isn't one here. So you've got several options. You can use trial and error, or you can use the ARC method, or you can factor by grouping. I'm going to do this by grouping. This is where I take the first times the last. So we've got a product of 12, and we want to find two numbers whose product is 12 and whose sum is the middle term, is negative 7. So a product of 12, this could be 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. If we add each of these pairs of numbers, we're going to get 13 and 8 and 7. Now I see that this last one is the right number, but it's the wrong sign. That means we have the right numbers, but the wrong signs. If we take negative 3 times negative 4, that is positive 12. And negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7. So we've got the right numbers. So we're going to rewrite this as 2x squared. We're going to split this negative 7x up using the two numbers we just found. So minus 3x, minus 4x, and then keep the last number. This we're now going to treat as two separate problems. So we're going to look for a common factor in each group. So for the first group, these both have an x in common. If we factor that out, we're left with 2x minus 3. The second group, I can see they're both even, so they both have a 2 in common. And to save some headache down the road, I'm going to take whatever leading sign we have here. So I'm going to treat negative 2 like it's our common factor. So factoring out a negative 2, we're left with 2x minus 3. And now the big picture common factor, I see that these both have a 2x minus 3 in common. So once we factored that out, once the 2x minus 3 has been factored out, x minus 2 is what's left in the parentheses. So we've now factored the first polynomial. Next up, we've got 2x squared minus 6x minus 20. As mentioned before, the first thing we always look for is a common factor. And I see that these are all even, so we can factor a 2 out. Factor that out, we're left with x squared minus 3x minus 10. And now we're looking for two numbers whose product is negative 10 and whose sum is negative 3. So to multiply to negative 10, we could either have 1 times negative 10, or 2 times negative 5, or 5 times negative 2, or 10 times negative 1. Looking at each of these sums, we've got negative 9, negative 3, positive 3, and positive 9. I see this is the one that works. So that means we're going to factor this up as x plus 2 times x minus 5. And make sure you don't forget the common factor that we took out in the first step. So we've now factored the second polynomial. Next up, we've got x squared plus x minus 2. I see there's no common factor, so we can go right to our two sets of parentheses. X times x to give us x squared, and we want two numbers whose product is negative 2 and whose sum is positive 1. So we can write this as positive 2 and minus 1. So the third polynomial is factored. Then we're going to go on to the last one. This is 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. This is going to fall out just like A did earlier. You can do this by either grouping or trial and error or the slide method, arc method. Just so we've seen a little bit of each, I'm going to do this by the slide method. This is where we move the 2 to the end and multiply. So we've got x squared minus 5x plus 6. And we're going to factor this up like we would polynomials along the lines of part C. So 2 x's, x times x will give us x squared. And then we're looking for two numbers whose product is 6 and whose sum is negative 5. So this would be negative 3 and negative 2. However, this was not the original problem that we factored. So now we've got to divide each of these by the leading coefficient that we slid. So we divide each of these by 2. That second polynomial we can reduce to x minus 1. The first one, we didn't have any fractions in the original problem, so we've got to slide back to get rid of the fractions in the end. So this will be 2x minus 3 times x minus 1. So now we've factored all 4 parts. We're now going to rewrite the original problem. So I know that for A, let me scroll up a little bit more to get our answer for A, was 2x minus 3 times x minus 2. This B that we had in the denominator was 2 times x plus 2 times x minus 5. C we found was x plus 2 times x minus 1. And then D we had as 2x minus 3 times x minus 1. Okay, now that we've factored everything, we're going to see what's going to reduce. So I'm going to go through each factor at the top and see what can cancel with it in the bottom. So first up, we have 2x minus 3. I see that this 2x minus 3, we can match that up with the 2x minus 3 in the denominator, and those cancel out. I see we have an x minus 2 here, but there are no x minus 2's in the denominator, so this won't cancel with anything. It's going to stay. Next up, we have an x plus 2 in the numerator and an x plus 2 in the denominator, so these will cancel. Next up, I see we have an x minus 1 and an x minus 1 in the denominator, so those two will cancel. Let's rewrite to see what is left. We've got x minus 2 over 2 times x minus 5 for the first fraction. And for the second fraction, everything cancels. So if we multiply these together, we've got x minus 2 over 2 times x minus 5. Now you could leave your answer in this form, or you could rewrite by distributing through in the denominator to give us x minus 2 over 2x minus 10. Either one of these two answers would be acceptable.